This is Mike Brennan here at the National Hurricane Center. It's just after 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, October 9th, coming on with the latest this morning on a very dangerous Hurricane Milton, rapidly approaching the west coast of the Florida Peninsula with multiple life-threatening hazards that are going to begin playing out this afternoon into tonight and well into Thursday across much of Florida. Right now, Milton is a very powerful Category 4 hurricane. Maximum sustained winds are around 145 miles per hour. You can see the eye here on radar, currently centered about 190 miles southwest of Tampa. Milton is now moving toward the northeast more quickly now at 17 miles per hour. And from the radar, you can see heavy rainfall spreading across much of the southwest coast of Florida up into central and even northern Florida. We also have multiple tornadic thunderstorms present with tornado warnings in effect over portions of southern Florida right now that have had confirmed tornadoes on the ground. So we're starting to see those impacts take shape across much of Florida here, and conditions are going to deteriorate rapidly as we go through the next few hours. Still very concerned about the potential for a devastating storm surge across portions of the west coast of Florida, from Anna Maria Island down to Boca Grande. That's areas like Manatee, Sarasota, down to the Charlotte County area. 10 to 15 feet of inundation above ground level expected somewhere in that area. North of that, 8 to 12 feet, including the Tampa Bay region up to Anclote River. South of that area, down to Bonita Beach, Sanibel Island, Fort Myers Beach, Charlotte Harbor, 8 to 12 feet of inundation expected. So we have a storm surge warning in effect for almost the entire west coast of Florida, from Yankeetown all the way to Flamingo. If you were in those storm surge evacuation zones in that region, please escape now while you still can. If you've been asked to leave, you have just a little bit of time left before the water starts to rise later today. I do want to note that also on the east coast of Florida, from Sebastian Inlet and then all the way up to Altamaha Sound in southern Georgia, we have a storm surge warning in effect as well, including portions of the St. Johns River for dangerous storm surge inundation there, as much as 3 to 5 feet above ground level for when Milton exits the east coast of Florida tomorrow. So let's talk about why you want to get out of those storm surge evacuation zones. What are you going to see when that devastating push of water comes in off the Gulf onto the west coast of Florida? You're going to see large areas with deep water due to storm surge flooding. Again, 10 to 15 feet above ground level in some places. Structural damage to buildings, some buildings being washed away by damaging wave action. Locations may be uninhabitable for an extended period. You do not want to be in those locations after the storm. Roads will be washed out or flooded, escape routes may be cut off, and there will be major damage to coastal infrastructure in those areas. Now let's move on to the wind threat. Again, Milton right now, a Category 4 hurricane, still expected to be a major hurricane when it reaches the west coast of Florida late this evening or overnight tonight, and maintain hurricane status all the way across the Florida Peninsula and out into the western Atlantic during the day on Thursday. Everywhere you see in red here is under a hurricane warning, and that includes places like Fort Myers up through Port Charlotte, Tampa, St. Petersburg, all the way up to Ocala, Orlando, Melbourne, to St. Augustine. So much of the central portion of the Florida Peninsula, both coasts, expecting hurricane conditions, and particularly within that landfall area where we're expecting those Category 3 winds in the eye wall, you're going to have significant structural damage to even to well-framed homes. Mobile homes could be severely damaged or destroyed. Large trees will be snapped and uprooted. Widespread power outages. Again, roads will be impassable from large debris. And then we're also going to see hurricane force winds again along the I-4 corridor, especially in wind gusts, leading to significant power outages, wind damage in this area as well. Now let's move on to the flooding threat, which is substantial as well, from rainfall now along and north of the track of Milton Center, which now appears to be focused on that I-4 corridor from Tampa to Orlando to Daytona Beach, expecting 6 to 12 inches of rain, isolated rainfall amounts as high as 18 inches, and that's going to lead to widespread life-threatening, potentially catastrophic flooding in this region, especially this area highlighted in pink, all the way from today into Thursday. That's where we're going to have widespread, potentially life-threatening flooding along that I-4 corridor, with a substantial risk even north and south of that area as well, depending exactly on where those heaviest rains fall. When we get up to north of 15 inches of rain, the types of impacts we see are flooding to homes and businesses, rescues being conducted, flooding in places that don't normally flood, and again, roads that will be closed and eroded, creating hidden dangers that will not make it safe to be out and about. So the message this afternoon, again, I want to touch on the tornado threat as well, which I mentioned at the beginning, is expanding and is quite significant across much of central and southern Florida, with a greater tornado risk than is even typical with most landfalling hurricanes, especially in this region from, say, Orlando down to the Lake Okeechobee area, but extending across much of central and southern Florida, where we have a tornado watch in place through 9 p.m. tonight. And again, those tornadoes and those small thunderstorms will be advancing northward out ahead of Milton's landfall, going to create dangerous conditions across portions of the Florida Peninsula. So if you are in these areas, you want to make sure you have multiple ways to get weather alerts, flash flood warnings, tornado warnings. Make sure you have wireless emergency alerts turned on your smartphone, have a battery-powered NOAA weather radio so that you will be alerted, especially overnight tonight when you might be asleep, to dangerous conditions in your area. So again, let's wrap up with the final points here on Hurricane Milton. We're expecting a large area of destructive storm surge exceeding 10 feet above ground level in some places along portions of the west central coast of the Florida Peninsula. If you're in that storm surge warning area, it's a life-threatening situation. You should evacuate. You still have a little bit of time to get out and save your life. Devastating hurricane-force winds are expected along portions of the west coast of Florida and then across the Florida Peninsula along and near the track of Milton's center. Again, life-threatening hurricane-force winds, especially in gusts in places like Orlando, all the way over to the east coast of Florida. Preparations to protect life and property should be rushed to completion. And then finally, we have that heavy rainfall risk with the potential for life-threatening and catastrophic flash and urban flooding across portions of central Florida, with a risk of long-term major river flooding as well. So please stay with us here at the National Hurricane Center at hurricanes.gov for more on Milton throughout the rest of the day. And tonight, you can get more information on your local impacts at your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Brennan at the National Hurricane Center.